Hello viewer, welcome to History and Government Form 3. This is lesson 4 with your teacher Mr. John N. Gatuma. It's my pleasure to welcome you in this lesson. In our previous lesson that we had, we were looking at the factors that led to the scramble for colonies in Africa. And we said that the scramble led to partitioning of Africa. And I gave you some assignment to attempt at home. This question was, you outline 3 factors that led to the scramble for colonies in Africa. So these factors that led to the scramble for colonies in Africa was to acquire the raw material. We said that acquiring the raw materials in Europe, there was the Industrial Revolution. And Industrial Revolution, it created a need for the raw materials. And these raw materials were to be extracted from the colonies in Africa. And therefore, they had to come and scramble to take these colonies. Number 2 factor that led to the scramble and partitioning of Africa is it is because of settling the surplus population. So in Europe, because of the Industrial Revolution, machines replaced human labor, and there was migration of people to urban centers. So therefore, population grew in number. So the excess population was to be settled in the colonies in Africa. Another is to have superiority, or rather the spirit of nationalism in Europe. So the country was regarded to be more superior than the other if they acquire more colonies. So therefore they had to prove their superiority by acquiring as more as the colonies in Africa as possible. So these were the factors among many others that led to the scramble and partitioning of Africa. So today we shall continue with the invasion of Africa and the process of colonization. And our subtopic that we're going to deal with is the process of partitioning or partition of Africa. We said that the scramble led to the partitioning of Africa, and therefore after scrambling for the colonies in Africa, so these countries in Europe, they had to settle so that they can come up with a strategy to divide up Africa. So therefore, partitioning refers to the dividing up of Africa. So we shall begin this by looking at one man that actually brought he brought these countries together so that they can amicably share or rather divide up African colonies. This man is Otto von Bismarck, and Otto von Bismarck lived between 1871 to 1890. This is the time that actually he played a very great role. And he was the first Chancellor of Germany. The man is the man who led the Berlin Conference. We shall deal with the Berlin Conference in 1884 to 1885. And this is for a peaceful partitioning of Africa. The Otto von Bismarck, this is the man that we are. He's the first Chancellor in Germany, and he's going to lead through the process of partitioning of Africa. And the process of partitioning of Africa, it was a peaceful process by the help of the conference. And for peaceful partitioning of Africa, German Chancellor who is the first German chancellor, he was known as the Otto von Bismarck. He convened a conference in Berlin, that is in Germany, and this conference, the 15 European states, or rather the nations, attended, and by February 1885, the Africa was to be shared effectively by the terms that we shall deal with. Some of the following rules and conditions were followed to govern the process, and these rules is the terms of Berlin Conference. The terms of Berlin Conference are: 1. The sphere of influence. This stated that one was supposed to inform the other on the areas already occupied. After the scrambling for the colonies in Africa among the European nations, each European nation, they were supposed to declare the region that they occupied as a sphere of influence. So this instruction was to ensure that all the European nations that had an interest in Africa, they were able to have, or rather to acquire, the colonies without any disputes occurring. The term number 2, or the condition, is the effective occupation. This term, or rather this condition, stated that any claim by any power was regarded valid by this term for the effective occupation of Africa. So the countries in Europe, they were supposed to, this European power, the imperialists, they were supposed to effectively occupy the region. And this stated that for the effective occupation of Africa or African territories, the European power had laid claim on African territories. It was required to actually to inform others, and so that the claim could be ratified, or rather to be made valid by this term. Third term of the Berlin Conference is the King Leopold was regarded as the head of Congo Freetown. King Leopold II, or rather King Leopold I, he was regarded as the leader of the Congo, as the head of Congo Freetown. And the conference partitioned the Congo Basin between the Portugal, France, and Leopold's Congo Free State. The Niger Basin was partitioning between the British and France. So this partitioning of Africa was made possible because of the Berlin Conference that made the King Leopold II to occupy the Congo Freetown. Other terms are the abolition of slave trade, and this one term stated that the European nation, once they are occupying the African colonies, were supposed to abolish, or rather stop, the slave trade that was happening and introduce the legitimate trade. The legitimate trade, this is a trade that dealt with the commodity, or rather this trade was against the use of people, or rather selling the slave as the trade item. So this one led to the scrap, or rather abolishment of the slave trade in Africa. Next, another term is the protection of the white man's interest. This European nation, upon the establishment of the colonies in Africa, they were supposed to protect the white man's interest. That is the missionaries. They were supposed to protect the missionaries in the territories under their control. So the powers resolved to stamp out the slave trade and also protect the missionaries. Remember, the Christian missionaries, they are the one who accelerated the abolishment of the slave trade. And therefore, while they had their activities in Africa, was the Europeans' power who was supposed to protect the Europeans among being manipulated in Africa. Another term is the freedom of navigation from trade in Niger, Congo, and Zambezi. So the powers agreed that the basins of River Congo, the Niger and Zambezi, as well as the tributaries, they would be open for free trade. So these areas, that is the Congo, River Congo, Niger, and Zambezi, and also their tributaries, it was declared as freedom of navigation. Each country would be able to navigate this area for the purpose of the trade. The Berlin Conference and some of the signatories, or rather those who are there in the conference. The Berlin Conference was meant to divide Africa on the principle of effective occupation. And the effective occupation stated that any power that laid claim to African territories was required to show proof of effective occupation. This was to reduce, or rather it reduced the violence and rivalries among the Europeans' power. So the Europeans' power, because initially they had started a scramble, and we said that scramble, there is no any defined rules of this scramble. But now in partition, there is some laid rules, or rather ground rules, among the competitors. So this one, the Berlin Conference made the signatories, or rather the countries who had the interest in Africa, to reduce the violence, or rather the rivalries among themselves, so that they can occupy Africa peacefully. This is a Berlin Conference, the sitting at the Berlin Conference. There are 15 signatories. They had now sat down and drawn Africa in such a way that each power, they will have an effective occupation in their respective colonies in Africa. And the terms or the rules and regulations, it was drawn in this conference that actually ended in February. The result of the Berlin Conference, you realize that after Berlin Conference, it led to partitioning of Africa. Ideally, the partitioning at the Berlin Conference was to ensure there is a proper partitioning of Africa without any European nation engaging in the war. And therefore, after they met, these powers were, we have them, the great power represented by the yellow color. You see the Britain have the yellow color. So these were the areas that they got, or rather they occupied after the Berlin Conference. We have the red, that is on the side of the western part of Africa. We have the France occupying these areas, among many other. You can see them represented in the red. We have the Belgium occupying Congo, Freetown. And remember, Belgium was under Leopold II. It was a very small country in Europe, and therefore they were able to take this region that you can see. We have the Portugal, that is the green. The Portugal took this part that you can see on the map of Africa after the Berlin Conference. They occupied this region. We have the Italy. Italy is another power, European power, that occupy this region. You can see represented. We have the German. The reason why you can see German in red, see that Germans occupied the region that you can see in red, but after some time, these territories was taken, and this is when the countries engaged in the war. After it was found that is the one that instigated the war, the territories were taken and given, and we shall discuss them. It was indicated under the League of Nations. We have the Spain. Spain also, can see them as the color they are occupying. Actually, they had only one colony. And we have blue, that is the independent area, or rather area that was left, independent area. So ideally, you can see how the Africa was divided among themselves as a result of this. And therefore, this one comes to the end of our lesson today. And I want to give you some assignments to go and try at home, so that in the next lesson, we shall be able to discuss them in detail. So you discuss this question. You attempt the question. This is state and explain 4 terms of Bahrain Conference. State and explain 4 terms of Bahrain Conference. So with this, it has come to the end of our lesson, and it has been a great pleasure to take you through the process of partitioning of Africa. I am Mr. John Agatumo. So you can, for this and much more, any question that you have, you can SMS us through the number on your screen, that is 4007, or in our page, Facebook page, you can get us through Elimu TV, and our Twitter handle is at Elimu_KE. So thank you, and stay tuned to Elimu TV. Till we meet next time. Thank you.